Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, it's been requested quite a lot, so I thought I'd show you how to help your bearded dragon eat vegetables and fruits, because I know a lot of people really struggle with this and getting their bearded dragon to try and eat. It can be a very tricky process, but I'm going to show you some tips that I use and I used when Humphrey was growing up, and just some things you can maybe buy to help. Oh, Humphrey wants to come. She wants to be in the video. Hello. Hey. So I haven't fed Humphrey yet, but I do have her veggies here, so I'm going to show you what I do while I'm when I'm about to feed her, to try and get her to eat if she's not going to. Also, I'd just like to say Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you had your holidays were a good time and you got time to spend with your family and friends. And I wish you all the best of luck in the new year. She wanted to be in the video. Okay, so there are about 5 or 6 tips that I use. So the main one that I suggest is actually moving the food with your fingers, because they struggle to see stationary things, so things obviously that don't move, that they just can't see very well. They don't think it's alive, and obviously as they're predatory animals, they will go after alive food. So this is one of the biggest issues with feeding fruit and veg. But what I do is just kind of wiggle it around slowly, like with my hands. I'll show you what I do, but that's what I do, and that usually gets her to eat it. You also want to put your bearded dragon in front of the food, otherwise they won't be able to. Otherwise they may not be able to see it. Oh, Humphrey, what are you doing? Humphrey. I think she thought I was food. So as I was saying, you want to move your bearded dragon in front of the food before you try doing this technique, or else they will struggle to see it, and they might not know that it's actually there. Another thing I usually do, which you should do anyway, is actually dusting her food with her calcium dust. So I sprinkle this on her food when I feed her. Most of the time, not as much anymore because she's fully grown now, but every so often I sprinkle that on her food, and because it's white, it gives it kind of a contrast, so it kind of catches their eye more, because it's like a bigger contrast, so that it stands out more to them. So that is one, well, 2 of the techniques that I have been most successful with using. Another one you can use is when you're trying to get your bearded dragon to eat new foods and just trying to eat them in general, is feeding brightly coloured foods. So obviously with vegetables this is quite difficult, but you can feed carrots, celery, peppers. With fruits you could feed strawberries, blueberries, bananas. They're very good for feeding brightly coloured foods, because obviously they're quite significant in how they look, quite bright. And obviously you can come up with loads of different coloured foods. So this can actually help, because it encourages them to eat, because it looks more appealing and it just looks nicer for them to eat. And obviously when you're trying to get your bearded dragon to eat fruit and vegetables, it's very good to try variety, and not trying to feed the same thing every day, because they'll get bored and then they will kind of associate eating all fruit and veg with that one food that you've been feeding quite a lot. So it's kind of good to have a rotating cycle of what you try, and then when they get used to it, to switch it up kind of a bit more, so that they get a big variety of foods. Well, it's for their diet anyway, they need a big variety, but it's good to switch it up while you're trying to get them to eat it, so that they kind of get a differentiated sense of taste and foods, so it can kind of encourage them to eat more if they like what they're having and it's a variety. You also want to start young with feeding bearded dragons fruit and veg. Like, it's not all about the live food. Yeah, it should be 80% live food and 20% fruit and veg, but it is very important to get them to try and eat when they're younger, because they'll be more likely to eat it. because it's very difficult when they're older, like Humphrey, if she's been used to just feeding live food and then they obviously their diet switches, so it becomes more veggies and fruit and less protein. It can be very difficult to get them to eat, especially if they haven't, because this is obviously their main source of food for when they're adults, and obviously if they aren't eating that, then that can be quite detrimental to their health. So it's very important to start while they're young. Now this is quite difficult because obviously baby bearded dragons eat a lot of insects. They can have up to 100 crickets a day, so it can be very expensive as well, but it's very important to start feeding them when they are babies. Now for this technique, it can be seen as harsh or cruel, but it is only for their benefit. What you want to do is, if they aren't eating the vegetables and they're just leaving it all the time, what you can do is lessen their live food. And this is actually what I did with Humphrey when she was growing, because she'd only have a little bit of rocket every day and I needed her to eat more of it while she was growing up, like at the year-old stage. So what I did was I lessened how much live food I was giving her, so that she kind of resorted to the vegetables, because she thought, oh, I'm not getting the yummy food that I always have, I now need to look for other sources of food. So when you look at it, it does make sense. You don't want to starve them, obviously, because that would be very cruel. But say if you're feeding them 100 crickets a day, maybe go down to half that, 50. It's kind of like, you need to judge it because you obviously know your bearded dragons better than I do. If they're having 20 locusts a day, maybe lessen it to 5 to 7. It obviously really depends on what size food you're giving as well, but then this kind of makes them a bit more hungry, and then they kind of have to resort to the vegetables. So this is important as well while they're young, so you want to have a balance, but don't do it for too long. Try it for only a few days at a time, because you don't want to go for a whole week without giving them the food that they need, the correct diet. Only for like 3 days or so. So the first day they're like, oh no, I'll just get more insects, and then the second day they're like, oh, maybe I should eat the food, if you see what I mean. And then obviously go back to their normal cycle, then start next week. So it's like you can try it over a period of time, but it's just very important that bearded dragons do get the balance in the diet that they need of eating fruit and vegetables. So to go with what I said about giving the calcium dust, because it gives a contrast, you can also try feeding the vegetables on a light or white background, such as a paper towel. This actually really does encourage them to eat, because as I said, it's like a contrast, but it's a bigger contrast than just the sprinkling the calcium dust, because it kind of makes the vegetables stand out on the plate or dish, whereas if they're on like a blue or brown dish, then it kind of looks a bit dull, whereas the white background really enhances it and makes it look much better. So this does actually encourage them to eat, and they can see it easier as well. So this does help quite a lot. So another way you can also get your bearded dragon to eat more vegetables is by placing them on live food like this, and then they usually end up eating the vegetables. And as you can see, she doesn't like that, but it can actually encourage them to eat more. And then when they do taste it, obviously as she is, they think, oh, that's actually quite nice. Half the time, that's now she's eating it. And that can actually encourage them to eat their live food as well, their vegetables more. So things you can buy small vibrating dishes that make the food move itself, but obviously this is an extra cost when you could just do it with your hands, because I think it's the same effect really. And just things like that, you can just buy just dishes that move, and obviously paper towels you can get, and that's mainly it really. There isn't really much you can buy to encourage them to eat their veggies, but obviously I hope these techniques did help, and they do help you with feeding your bearded dragon more fruit and veg and getting them to eat. If you have any more questions, just leave them in the comment section below and I'll try my best to answer them, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.